All right, my name is Zach. Welcome back. If this is your first time, thank you for coming. And if you're coming back, I appreciate you rejoining. Today, I hope to earn your likes and subscriptions and shares, if it's cool enough, by putting to video the things I have not found on video, but I've only found deep hidden inside etymological and scholastically articles. And I'm going to pull that out today, make it super exciting for us, because today I'm going to tie the biblical Kaphtor, son of Mizraim, the son of Ham, the son of Noah, into his Egyptian name, aka Kaphtor. I also show that he is Ptah, the creator god of ancient Egypt, the father of Khnum, the one who created the potter's wheel, and that I use that to prepare the way to show that he is Kothar Hasis. Who's that? A gentleman from the Ugaritic Baal cycles, where Baal versus Yam the dragon, and Kothar Hasis is his guy from an island with a forge and brings him great weapons. I'm going to prove that this is this gentleman, the son of Mizraim, the son of Ham, the great grandchild of Noah, and I will use that to start tying in all the other myths. This will tie us into El, Kronos, Zeus, Vulcan, Hephasteus, and many more that I haven't popped into yet. Many more from the Egyptian set of myths. Because like I said, one god can have many names in the same culture for different attributes, for different periods of time, and another culture can have the same list for him, but be very difficult to transcribe. So we have a lot of sources that we can pull from, but I pull from just a few today, and I'm going to try to keep it short, succinct, to the point, and exciting for you. So hold on, it's going to be exciting and a deluge of information. God bless you. Let's go. Bible, right? Coming out of the flood, the biblical characters that came out of the flood on this side of the flood, and that went from Mount Ararat in Turkey down to Sumer, and then spreading after the Tower of Babel incident. So if the Bible is true, we'll see that a lot of these mythologies that we're looking at will follow that characteristic, and I've found that to be true, and so has all of history and geography, even though they often try to change the names and make it difficult to compare to the Bible. But we're breaking it apart, thanks be to God, with the internet that we have, and that's been the big difference. So today and for the next few series, we'll be focused on Kaphtor, the son of Mizraim, who's the son of Ham, who's the son of Noah. Why will we be doing that? Because I've found mounds, gigantic mountains of evidence that are linking him to the foundation in the earliest times of Crete, and Byblos, Lebanon, and Memphis, Egypt. These same characters seem to be tied, and they seem to be tied into some way with Caphtor, or Kaphtor's father Mizraim, and their power struggles with like Cush and Nimrod. That fight and the struggle over the power structure in Egypt seems to be where the story of Osiris, Dionysus, all these original myths come out of, is these false cults that were created in Egypt by men stealing stories from the pre-flood and proclaiming themselves as gods. So, moving on from it, moving to starting Egypt, Crete, Byblos, many other places where we'll find our clues. We have to question: is it possible that this one of the questions, the big question we're asking, is it possible this grandson of Noah can be the key that opens the door to identifying many other mythological characters? Personally, I believe so, to compare them with each other in the Bible, specifically the Bible. We're starting in the Bible, and we're going to come back to the Bible. We're starting in the Bible today. At the end of this, in every series, and specifically the end of this series, we will show that it's biblical characters who have taken these myths to proclaim themselves as gods. And so we're going to flesh out who is who, whose name is whose name. I'm not perfect, and I'm not presenting you with the full 100% completed flow chart of the gods of old and their biblical counterparts, but I will start off with the most sure of information. At times things are cloudy. That's where I will, I appreciate people's help, if you may. One god in a myth could actually be that god's son, for instance. One mythological character could represent a man's weapons. They gave God names to weapons. They gave divine names to instruments and made them characters, so we have to sift through that. I'm finding Greece does a really good job at doing these things, specifically taking these stories that are already difficult, making them more dramatized, more fake, more difficult to search through. Right, but Greece, Japheth was on the receiving end of these cults of Ham coming out of Egypt and Crete. Okay, coming out of Egypt, Byblos to Egypt to Crete, and then spreading into the Greek world there, and previously having been spread, these cults being spread in Sumer. right? But these same characters left Sumer at the Tower of Babel, and then bam, built their civilization with the idea of what Nimrod had done and what he was able to do and how he proclaimed himself God. And as men looking at that, you see, look at the power he had, the entire country he had. He was given harems of women from whatever age to be able to brainwash completely into thinking and acting and believing and living as if he was a god on earth. So if you can imagine the power that would give to a man and what you'd be able to do to people, I mean, you know, anything from that, a harem of women, to look at the gladiator circuses in Rome where people will kill and die for you as you proclaim yourself a false god. So keep an eye out for that. We have to be careful and dig deep to present evidence that will propel our Christian community to identify and overcome all pagan religions. So let's start down here. Kaphtor, from whom the Philistines came. So that's where we're going, to prove the Philistines ended up in Lebanon from Kaphtor. But where did Kaphtor go first? Kaphtor is the son of Mizraim. Mizraim is the son of Ham. So that puts us in the Bible who we're looking at and where we're going. And the spelling of Kaphtor here is Caphtor. In the proper spelling, it starts with a K. So when we get into etymology, that'll be important. Okay. And scrolling down to my note here, Bible Hub is awesome because it'll give you references and help like this, which points us to the Kaphtorites from whom the Philistines came. It says to go and look at Jeremiah 47 and Amos 9. So let's do that. Follow the breadcrumbs, right? So, Jeremiah 47. This is the one that I like because it says the island. So, the time has come for the Philistines to be destroyed, along with their allies from Tyre and Sidon. Yes, the Lord is destroying the remnant of the Philistines, those colonists from the island of Crete. Okay, so here's where we're identifying it said Kaphtor became the Philistines. When did that happen? When Kaphtor came from Crete, right? So Kaphtor ended up in Crete. And in my study, what I'm going to show is based upon the power struggle that you see with Osiris and Horus. Horus, I'm starting to see tie-ins to this gentleman here. That power struggle between them and Set, who is like a Baal character coming in and trying to take over the throne of Egypt. And I think at this period of time is when Kaphtor had the bright idea to get out of town and went to the island of Crete where he started his bull cult. And it seems he either started it or his father started it, and then his father was killed in Egypt, being probably Mizraim, who is Mizraim or someone similar, who was killed by this Baal character, this Nimrod, started with like Nimrod type character who came in, Set, who came in and killed Osiris, and then Horus and Set started to vie for the throne. And we did see that in our last series, the Dionysiaca, where Zagreus was born to Zeus, and he was the bull. He seemed like the Minoan type character, the Crete type character. He was killed by Titans, which led to the second born Dionysus, who is the goat. Okay, and that was our tie-in, and that's what led us to this series where I found this awesome information. And what I found in Deuteronomy 23, a similar thing happened when the Kaphtorites from Crete invaded and destroyed the Avites, who had villages in the area of Gaza. So here we're developing the story by using the Bible, and see, the Bible is very humble, great, amazing. The craziest things you can imagine are hidden inside of one verse. And I know one reason he's God is because he doesn't brag about it. He doesn't have to brag about it. These other religions form entire cults based upon one action of God, and he'll hide it inside of a single verse and keep rolling because he's glory manifest, right? And so here we have the story added from the Bible giving us help that this entity called Kaphtor, the bloodline Kaphtor, ended up in Crete, and then from Crete came down into Gaza, right, Lebanon. And they came back there and they destroyed these entities called the Avites or the Avim. Okay, and one of the reasons that they did such is this is about the time of the Exodus. The Jews the Israelites are about ready to come out of Egypt with plus or minus 100 years. At the same time, Crete is getting bombarded by tsunamis and volcano ash because the volcano of Santorini blew up around 1600 BC and is what led to the destruction of Crete, and then the takeover by Mycenaean civilization. So they'll say, oh, well, the Minoans were Greek, they were the same thing. They've all no, the Minoans held their own until a tsunami destroyed their society, and then because of their weakness, they were absolved into Mycenaean Greek. And so they did that at the end of that period, towards the time of the Exodus. That happened, and they went into Philistine, into Gaza, and they ended up being some of the people that the tribes of Israel were going against once they got to the Holy Land. Okay, and here is God speaking about Israel, and for one of the things for us to remain humble, and it also points out the what we're looking at here, which is, are you Israelites more important to me than the Ethiopians? Do you think you're more important than the Ethiopians, O Israelites? For I, the Lord, have brought Israel out of Egypt, but I also brought the Philistines from Crete, and led the Arameans out of Kir. So God's saying here, be humble, that he pulled this people, set them apart, and brought them from Egypt, and they were in the midst of this complete, full, total pagan, false god religion set up by men. And he said, don't think yourself too high and important, because he brings, he picks, he chooses, right? He brought them out of Egypt, but he also brought other people and saved other people for his own reasons, and if we don't vie and we don't ask and we don't receive the beautiful blessing of placement where he sets us, then he will take another. That doesn't mean we're going to hell, but we do vie for purpose and a mission here in life. Praise God. And we got to fight for it. So what we see here in these verses is God giving us the foundation to study this topic out that is extremely important, and is being revealed to us now in this age. Because like I said, there isn't any other videos that I found on this, just etymological studies and studies within translations. So let's dive in. I've opened the page here for the Hebrew, the full page for Caphtor, in which you can jump into the Hebrew of it to show you that it's with a K. And so this is going to be important because that's going to help tie us into the Egyptian characters and spelling of this character, so we can see who he is and find that foundation so we can follow him, as we'll see, to Crete. And we'll look at his father as well. So as we see here, yes, his name does start with a K, and so in a lot of the ancient languages, Sumerian and such, you won't see the vowels, so you'll see his name often KPT, KPTR, Kaphtor, and we see in this strong concordance that it's telling us that this is probably a name for Crete. So we know, we just looked up a minute ago, he's the son of Mizraim, the son of Ham, and we'll show in a second that Mizraim equals Egypt. His dad is like the founder, the biblical founder almost of Egypt. And so I just want to show you over and over that it's pointed out that it is the Crete, the island of Crete. This word coastline can also be, right here, could also be defined as an island. And I believe that's all on that page. And so here I've written down that Mizraim is the son of Ham, the son of Noah, and was the biblical namesake for Egypt. So when I switch to the next page, I'll show you that. So that means that he must have been the founder of Egypt, or vied for the throne. And I'm thinking that for a moment he was the leader of Egypt, with Ham or against Ham, or in some ways Ham was in the picture as well. Maybe it's Ammon. I don't know about that yet. So with that being in the Bible, Mizraim being the founder of Egypt, that leads me to ask the question. This is an exciting question, we'll get into this later, but is Osiris Mizraim? And his son Caphtor, Horus, the faraway one. When you look at the definitions for Horus in the etymology, you'll get the faraway one. Why would Horus be the faraway one if he's a god that's there with you, like his dad? Well, if his dad died in the battle with Set, right, and it was a power struggle over the throne of Egypt, which kind of leads me to believe, hey, Mizraim, as the namesake of Egypt, might have been this gentleman, and Horus became the faraway one when he left, and then started this cult in Caphtor. Possibility. I'll have to dig into that more I'll look at that in another episode. So let's go look at Caphtor's father, who's Mizraim. And so this is Kaphtori. This is like the plural of the Caphtor. So his lineage, his line. And it also describes their land, which I showed many times, ended up going to Crete. And here is Mr. Mizraim himself. This is the founder of Egypt, the biblical namesake for Egypt. And so here, see here in the Strong's Concordance, he's a son of Ham. His descendants are named Mitzrayim, and their country, Mitzrayim, is Egypt. And I'll show you in the Bible. Genesis 12, they went down to Mitzrayim, translated everywhere over and over again as Egypt. They went near to Egypt. That's the word Mitzrayim, right? The same Hebrew. Where's it at? Same Hebrew in the bold. Okay? Went up from Egypt, up from Mitzrayim, so to the Negev. So it's using it as a place marker. And once again, more concurrence in the Browns Driver Briggs. It's a proper name of territory and of people of Egypt and Egyptians. And it's going to give you all these different etymology and comparisons here to look at. And I know you might, if you've seen this, where they're talking about Northwest Africa, that does not make sense when you look at all the biblical quotes. Just see the places where they're saying they're coming from, because it's more defined as the upper and lower Egypt, not Northwest, what are they saying, Northwest Africa. No, that's far from true. They were in Egypt. I don't know why they said that. Upper and lower Egypt, to be specific, because Mitzrayim is the plural. It's the dual form of Matzor, Matzrayim. Okay, so it's upper and lower Egypt. And this is our gentleman who we're studying, Caphtor's father, namesake of Egypt, meaning that at some point in time, Mr. Caphtor himself was in Egypt. And so what's the reason for him leaving? And the Osiris Horus story would be a perfect kind of look at analogy. Comparative mythology kind of ties in really well, I think. What do y'all think? And it's important to remember that Mizraim is Egypt, or that it equals Egypt, because that means that Caphtor left and it went to Crete, where we kept seeing those definitions, defined as Crete, defined as Crete. That's because that name keeps getting found in Crete. And we're about to look for I'm about to show you where. And so we can look for clues based upon that fact. And I'll show you one strain of this trail as we're going into Kephtor of Egypt, right? So, but we're going to look for clues generally that shows this entity the entity that left Egypt, right? An entity that left Egypt under Mitzrayim during this period where men were calling themselves gods. So we'll find someone who started a god cult, a false religion in Crete, and that'll be one of our next episodes. And that gets really deep. It starts tying in tons of so-called gods. And so we're looking for a founder character of Egypt in Mitzrayim, the father, and a founder of Crete who came from Egypt, to summarize. Both of which we know from Scripture got into proclaiming themselves as gods. The Bible has pointed to Egypt and Crete as our starting point. And so that's where we're going to start and focus, leading us to this awesome from the Jewish virtual library here. Oftentimes a very good site for research. And I'm going to read this whole thing because it's filled with information, and it's going to lead us into our next part of our study, is the showing of Egypt as Caphtor. All right, let me zoom in so you can see that better. Pardon me, a little bit. Okay, so Caphtor, a little bit blurred here, but placed either in the GNC area or on the southern coast of Asia Minor, according to, as we already read, Amos 9, Jeremiah 47, Genesis 10. The Philistines came from Caphtor prior to their penetration of southern Palestine. So they became the Philistines, as the Bible said. And Deuteronomy 2:23 notes that the Caphtorim destroyed the Avim, or the Avites, that dwelt in villages as far as Gaza, taking over their lands. And we see Gaza in the news today. And then we see the places in the news today, and they're based upon, in the Bible, the cities the Israelites did not take back over from the Rephaim, the Avim, and the false gods that God said to remove from the land. And so based upon those little mistakes, those thorns on their side were left there. And here we see that as part of what's in Gaza. And the Philistines came in, and then who were they worshiping? Giants like Goliath of Gath and things of that nature. So then they fell into, like, the Canaanite cults worshiping Rephaim, bloodlines and strange bloodlines that you'll find in Genesis 14 of the War of the Kings, Rephaim, Emim, Horites, and the Zamzumim and Ham. And those seem to be like Nephilim-ish type characters. But not to get too far down that path today, we'll continue. And in a Syrian document based upon ancient Babylon tradition describing the empire of Sargon the Great, king of Akkad, who really ties into Nimrod or someone really close to him, Kaphtor is located. Kaphtor, here we go with the K, the P, the T, and the R. Kaphtor. So that's why I said remember that Kaphtor actually starts with a K, and that the way that they spell it, they didn't use vowels, so KPTR is a great etymological match because their languages were the same before Babel, right? And then they're similar but separated in some ways at the tower. And Kaphtor, KPTR, is located beyond the Upper Sea, for example, west of the Syria-Palestine coastline, so west. Immediate west is Cyprus, but it has a different story behind it, and Crete is where we end up. In the Mari text, the term Kaphtoru, Kaphtorim, there we have again the KPTR, and then the plural, the UM, occur as names of precious goods apparently imported from the region of the Aegean Sea. According to Ugaritic texts, Kothar equals Kosar. Now, Kothar, in my last Dionysiaca series, Kothar I showed was the god of the forge, and that was Caphtor. The god of the forge ended up going to Crete and moving his forge to Crete. And so what we'll get into deep into another episode is Caphtor is Vulcan, is Hephasteus. On Crete he had a volcano to use, and what became the god of the forge because he can make a stronger tempered metal than anyone else, the volcano. No one else could build a fire as hot, which is how you temper metal and create stronger steel. And so he became the god of the forge, and that is going to be an awesome study. But that's not today. That's just another tie-in. That's awesome. Go and check that out, and I'll have a video soon, right? And then once again, that name KPTR. He lived there, and then he also was in Crete. In the story of the Ugaritic cycle of Baal, he comes back and forth to Crete, giving weapons to El and Baal to fight Yam, the god of the Egyptian river by Thebes. Okay, not to jump too far into that either. We'll keep going. It is accepted. Now here's the important part. It is accepted that the Kaphtor mentioned in inscriptions of Egyptian kings and nobles in the second half of the second millennium is identical with Kaphtor. Kaphtor is known in Egyptian sources as a distant land accessible by ships. So that's given us tons of details that we need to continually tie this in to this entity Kaphtor, being in Egypt and then being going to Crete. And continue reading. The location of Caphtor or Kaphtor is in dispute. Most scholars consider Caphtor to be the ancient name for Crete and the surrounding islands. The verses we went through. Caphtor is defined as an island. Furthermore, several verses place the origin of the Philistines among the Cretans, I think, while elsewhere they are identified as coming from Caphtor. So there's a biblical tie that's a hint from God. The word of God is not incorrect. It's purposely showing you that to give you a hint that he came from Egypt to Crete to become the Philistines. And while elsewhere they are identified as coming from Caphtor. The descent of the Caphtorim from the Egyptians, Genesis 10:14, hints at the close relationship that existed between Egypt and Caphtor. Archaeological excavations in Crete have shown that the island was a center of Minoan culture in the second millennium BCE, and that the population traded with Egypt. So here we go with another tie-in to a god. The god of Crete and the start of the cult of the Minotaurs would get us into Kronos, who went to Crete and had Zeus in the cave in Mount Ida, right? So now we're tying in Hephasteus, Vulcan, Kronos, Zeus, and then we'll get into Geb, the gods of Egypt, Osiris, Horus, Dionysus, Zagreus, are all being composed and having to do with this single entity character here, because that's how important he was. And It's an amazing study, and it's very difficult. So excuse me as I figure out how to present this study, because there's so much involved in it that it oftentimes takes me longer to post, because I get stuck off in 100 tabs of research of things that are highly interesting. But bear with me as I keep creating this series that is so exciting to me. And so it's a Minoan culture, excavated, and we'll get into the gentleman who did so. Found that it was, a bull cult. They worshipped the bull and bull man and the labyrinth and such. An Egyptian wall painting, and then we're going to get into next, from the reign of Thutmose, shows men from Kaphtor bringing gifts to the Egyptian king. The name Caphtor may be preserved in the name of the islands Carpathos near Crete, which takes us to this website here, In Search of Kaphtor, which, as we just looked, is like the English transliteration of Kaphtyw, the Egyptian spelling of Caphtor. And so as we look here, I'll pull this page down, I'd like you to kind of notice what the Cretans look like. So this is going to be the Kaphtyw, as we see right here, bottom left, bringing gifts to Egypt in the tomb of Rekhmir under Pharaoh Thutmose III. Right? And as we look at this article, we find some awesome things. By the time artists finished decorating the inside of the tomb of the Egyptian vizier Rekhmir, only a pale reflection of the greatness of the people known as the Kaphtyw remained. The carvings and paintings associated are dedicated to the 18th dynasty noble associated with Thutmose and Amenhotep the third and the second, respectively, told of gifts from afar, 100 years after the Thera cataclysm. And that cataclysm was the tsunami, the blowing up of the volcano of Santorini. Right, so Santorini was not far from Crete. Those volcanoes probably was where Hephasteus, Vulcan, got his name, the god of the forge. This cataclysm ended the world's first thalassocracy. I had to look that up. That is a sea kingdom, so this ties us into the sea peoples. Right, so they may or may not be the sea people. They may be in a combined force with them, but they are tied in because they are a sea people. And it looks like the first of coming right out of the flood as the great-grandson of Noah, grandson of Ham. The enigmatic people deemed Minoan by Sir Arthur Evans. The Minoan is the bull cult on Crete. That's the name they gave to it. It's not the name they had themselves. Crete has its own name, as we see here, Kaphtyw, an Akkadian Kaphtor, Bible, Kaphtorim, and Sir Arthur Evans, I don't know, he knew this when he named it, but then he came around to figuring this out. He deemed them Minoan, and that became a footnote in history by 1400 BC. So I'm going to go in a little bit more of these pictures and the actual tomb here itself, where they found these pictures of the island of the Kaphtorim bringing gifts to the king, because at this person is around the time of the disaster, right, is what it's saying. So I guess 100 years. Okay, so it's talking about gifts of them after this disaster happened, so their society has been brought low a little bit, so it's not at its peak. It's been brought low by this cataclysm. And as we look at his tomb, we start to see some of these cool pictures. And let me add some of these pictures in here, so we'll start to see. And then what I want you to notice at first is the color of the person, their complexion. That's going to be important. It's going to help identify between the Cretans, the Egyptians, and the Nubians, at least. And the Nubians would be from Cush, the Egyptians being Mizraim, and other subsets, and then Crete being its own, as Caphtor, who was son of Egypt, left and went to that island. And he was more red, which is interesting because that time is in with Edom being red. And so we'll look at a few more of these pictures. Awesome, beautiful artwork there. Same color here. These are the vases. So what it's showing is the Cretans this time are being subject to Egypt, and they're bringing gifts to Egypt, as shown right here. So we'll read this text. coming in peace by the great of Crete, islands that are in the middle of the sea, bending, bowing of the head, because of the power of his majesty, the king of Lower Egypt, men Kepre, given life forever, on learning of his strength in all foreign countries, their tribute being on their backs, in order that they may be given the breath of life. So I just want to point out again that here we are having a gentleman taking on the attributes and the things that are due to God. There is no man, there is no king who has ever given a man a breath of life. There's not a man who's made his own breath of life, and that's why we should always be thankful. As an older man told me, you should stop being thankful when you can start making your own air to breathe. And here's this gentleman saying he's a God Almighty, giving us the breath of life. So he's part of the cult that we're speaking of. And it's not good for men to do such. They are cursed because of it. And desiring to be faithful to his majesty, as if we owe men faith, to ensure that this power, or his power of the king, protects him. It is the confidence, the confidant of the king, mayor of the city, Vizier Rekmir, who receives all the tributes of all foreign countries which are brought due to the power of his majesty. So we have Vizier Rekmir being of the Vizier, which must be like some type of subset ruler. I haven't looked at it yet, sorry. Under Menkaure, who is the emperor, or aka the pharaoh, proclaiming himself as God. And so he's not just using fear here, he's also trying to use deception and psychology by proclaiming himself as gods, and that they're given the breath and they're given all these things for doing such to and with and for him. Right? And that's what men love to do, is proclaim themselves as gods up to this day. And so we'll look at some more pictures. Here we have the Cretan who is bringing his offering with a monkey, and we have a Nubian in the front, and we have what I believe is an Egyptian in the middle here. That's pretty awesome. You see the monkey climbing the giraffe's neck. And so this is in the tomb of the vizier of the pharaoh, and showing, because this vizier's job was to take in the tributes from these countries. So he's the guy who saw this. He was in charge of the ordering of it, and so that on his tomb he's showing what his job was, and he's proclaiming himself and having a little pride in that. So another interesting thing is looking down here at this picture at the people the Egyptians are calling the retinue, and as you'll see on the top there, we have all white complexions, with a few different hairstyles. Retinue seems to be the word for the Assyria, or Assyria, the land of the north, and that's what they're described under. And here's another picture. So this is ancient. This is in the 18th dynasty, so a long time ago. So it's interesting that this king is receiving all these people from all these different lands to receive tribute. So he was like the god of the land. And one other interesting part in here is Amon. There he is. Bringing, so this is talking about the captives of Nubia and retinue, bringing the children of the great of the southern countries together with the children of the great of the northern countries, which were fetched away as far as the better part of the spoils of his majesty, the king of Upper and Lower Egypt, Menkaure, endowed with life from all foreign countries, to fill the workshops and to be servants of the divine offerings for his father Amon, lord of the thrones of the two lands, as that which has been given him by Amon. And then going down to explain the level of the vizier's position, who receives the loot of each foreign country, which is carried back here through the strength of his majesty. And then so Amon being was the previous servants of the divine offerings for his father Amon. So Amon might be, I think it was Haman, but I haven't gotten deep enough into that to prove that. So I'm going to go back a little bit. Before I do, I just want to reiterate that the Mycenaeans, who people will like to say is the same culture as the Minoans, replaced by conquest the Minoans between 1436 and 1426 BC, which is very close to the time of Exodus. And the tribute carriers that we've seen, everyone else basically but the Egyptians, were initially represented wearing the belted Minoan loincloth, specifically here the Minoans, sorry, the Cretans. So they were shown wearing a specific type of loincloth, but the painters, after seeing the newcomers, had replaced it with the Mycenaean loincloth. Not everyone accepts that view. That's just kind of a smaller thing compared to what we're looking at. And so this guy I told you about here, Sir Arthur Evans, who is the one who kind of found the first palaces. He's the ones who named the society, the Minoans there, the bull cult. So I found this article while looking for things about him tying those two countries together, because he did that initial research and I knew he'd have great knowledge. This is a good article on that. It has very great information. They present it really well. The only thing is they don't exactly agree with me on who and where everyone comes from, and they're not coming from a biblical standpoint. But with that, we're still going to read that, and so we do differ in opinions, and so, you know, and you on this channel here can differ in opinion. We're trying to get to the truth of the matter, and that's what matters to us. So let's check it out. All right. Of all the various countries suggested, Crete has received the main support because it was accepted that Caphtor was described as an island in the Old Testament, and Crete is a large one. Since the early years of this century, the belief in Crete has been further strengthened by Sir Arthur Evans' discovery that it was also the home of a splendid civilization. There was a country known to the Egyptians as Kaphtor, or as it may have been pronounced, Kaphtor, and this is evidently the same name as a contemporary cuneiform Kaphtor, which is Akkadian, and as they say here, the much later Hebrew Caphtor, which Eber was definitely further down in the line than Caphtor. And so would the language have been developed into the way that it was. Okay? Based on the above mentioned firm belief, there has grown up a strongly held view that Kaphtor was also Crete. This idea, strengthened by the fact that certain embassies to Egypt in the 18th dynasty included among their presents some objects of Minoan type, and some, like we just looked at. In some of these paintings, the people are called the people of the isle in the midst of the sea, and in others, people of Kaphtor. So he gets into his thoughts on why we should separate those two and why they would be different. Such he says, some of the evidence comes from Egyptian and cuneiform information about Kaphtor, Kaphtor, and some more from biblical statements about Caphtor. Therefore, before approaching the inquiry, it should be noted that Kaphtor and Kaphtor are separated from Caphtor by the great invasions of the 12th century, which changed the entire landscape. But he says, if the inclusion of Kaphtor among the legendary conquests of Sargon of Akkad is not a later assertion, the name would have been known in Babylon about 2200 BC. That's before Abraham. So that's in the time frame that we're looking for. So I don't know if he doesn't know this, but that's pointing more to our conclusions. It is soon after this, about 2000 BC, that Kaphtor appears in the Egyptian records. At Mari in Mesopotamia, we hear of Kaphtor. So same Kptr. So at Mara is Mesopotamia, the land between two rivers where it all started. We hear of Kaphtor. So bam, that gives it back to our origins. This entity we've seen flow from, here we are in Mesopotamia. We have hints of it in Biblos, which I haven't gone into yet because I want to make its own episode because it involves the god El, who's there in it. But we have instances of this entity coming into Biblos, and then right after it comes back from Crete into Biblos, right? But then going into Egypt, where his father formed Egypt, going to Caphtor, and with the story of Kothar Ha-Wasis, and all these we'll get into. Well, I'll get into all these stories in my later series. Kothar Ha-Wasis being like Vulcan, Hephasteus, coming back and forth in the Ugaritic Baal cycle to help create weapons. And so we have this entire cycle that does what? It lines up biblically. And because it lines up biblically, we can be sure that we are on the right trail. Praise God. Okay? And looking at this, we follow that same pattern. Because here we have Mari in Mesopotamia, which is where they went to after the flood. Mount Ararat, all the children of Noah came down into the plains of Shinar, which is Mesopotamia between the two rivers. Between Potah River, between the two rivers. We hear of Kaphtor, Kptr. That's our Caphtor, and he was born by then. In the time of Hammurabi, 18th century BC, and the information that the Ugarit Rosh Hashanah texts give about the country comes from the early 14th century. And Ugaritic, or the Ugar where it's from, is like a mountain actually, I think in Lebanon on the sea, right by Israel. Excuse me. In the 19th dynasty at the latest, not later than the 13th century, a Kaphtiuan was living in Egypt. So we have it coming from 2200 BC in writing, and now all the way full circle, and there's still pieces of Kaphtiu living in Egypt, which is awesome. So let's look at this next source. And probably the last we hear of the country in contemporary records is to be found in the spell of Kaphtiu, about 1200 BC. The Caphtor of the Old Testament is only a memory, they say. This guy, maybe. Preserved in the traditions about the Philistines. The memory proves to have been accurate, though, if it be admitted that Kaphtor Kaphtor was Cilicia Trichia. I don't think I'm agreeing with him on there. We're agreeing with what the Bible says because we're looking at that full picture. Okay? And he continues, Kaphtiu had a seaboard, for the Egyptians sailed thither. The Egyptians said they sailed there. Hence, in this respect, it was like Caphtor, which is described as an island in Jeremiah. What was it? Minus 10, 45, 47. Whoops. The cuneiform texts mention Kaphtor. They give no indication as to where it lay, but only speak of it as a country from which ships come. So there's no other description except that ships come from it, and as being beyond the upper sea. But still, these pieces of information agree with other records that it had a seacoast, which an island has a seacoast. And for all fairness, this gentleman is arguing that it's along the eastern side of the Mediterranean, basically Byblos, he's trying to say. But as we're seeing, all the stuff points to it being Caphtor, an island, because if the Bible says Caphtor came and became the Philistines, like he wasn't there. It didn't say Caphtor was there and then changed his name. It said no, he came from the island. So we agree with the Bible. And this is one of the most awesome references I found, just this little page right here. And let's look at it because it is insane. Ermin, the literature of the ancient Egyptians, the admonitions of Ipuwer. The statement is that one no longer sails northward to Byblos, and continues that things no longer come from Kaphtiu. So it's kind of maybe like a wailing song or a lamentation, saying that because maybe this kingdom fell because of whatever happened, whether that be the volcano or whether that be, after the Israelites had broken through and destroyed a lot of them, even though Palestine survived. Maybe it has something to do with that. But what he's saying here is confirming that the tie of Egypt to Kaphtiu, Caphtor, and things, and it being referencing into sailing. No one sails northward to Byblos, and nothing. It seems as if you tie that into nothing sails from Kaphtiu. One I'm really excited about is right here, and this is where we'll take I believe our next episode will go. The Mari texts only speak of the products of Kaphtor, mentioning among other things a vase with fine metalwork. And some of the Ugarit Ras Shamra say that KPTR, Caphtor, and a country called HQ KPT are the abode of the divine craftsman, okay, Caphtor Wahasis, okay, who works gold and silver at his forge. Among the objects from Caphtor, one of the Maori texts makes special mention of a vessel Gaal, or Gal. Just as 350 years later, Tutmosis III picks out a silver shouty vessel, just joking, a shawabti vessel of the work of Kaphtor. They put a little bit more style points on it. I'll get there. For special mention among his, people. Right, and I means an island. Okay? What I want to focus on is, I did it real quickly, and I'll do it real quickly again in my last episode, finishing Dionysiaca. But what this is in Egypt, this is saying house, is what they've translated to us, is saying house of the Ka of Ptah, right? And it's not that, because it's also goes to be the house of this craftsman. Well, they don't want to tie these two in together because they both start with KTR. They both are Caphtor, and so this is the house or the mansion of Caphtor, not the Ka of Ptah, who's shown as a blue god of Egypt that's usually in funerary wrappings, right? It's not the house of the Ka of Ptah. It became that after he passed, but it is the house of Caphtor. Okay, and then knowing that is the house of Kothar Hasis, which I'll show you in just a second. Like I said, we've gone over that before, and we're going into great detail here soon. But I'll pull that up on our tabs. This gentleman works gold and silver at his forge. And as he does this in the Ugaritic Baal cycle, he's coming back and forth from an island to supply weapons to Baal and to be there and present himself as not the most powerful one. But he came there in anticipation of and to assist in a fight over the throne of power between Baal and the god Yam. And I just pointed out recently Ammon, and think of the etymological, the word tie-ins between Ammon and Haman, Ham. The whole tons of parts of the country is called Ham, Cham, or Chemet, right? The Egyptians are the Chemitic people, and so we have this god Ammon being high up, and as you saw, the pharaohs giving reverence to him as a god. Now, who was that? Because there's not many people that are above Caphtor, right? Praise God, it makes it a little bit simple for us. So we got Noah, and we're focusing here on the line of Ham. And then we can also, we're going to go to Japheth, because he has the Druids and the Celtics, the Gauls, the Scythians, the Khans, right? It wasn't just Ham that produced, unfortunately, blasphemous bloodlines that proclaim themselves gods. So I don't want to seem like I'm picking on just Ham. It's just that this is the easiest one to start off in, because the history of Egypt is so great, and that's just the truth of it. So back to the point, there's not many people above Caphtor, and I think we're going to find definitely who it is. But as I was saying, it's Ham came out of Noah. Noah had Mizraim, the biblical namesake for Egypt, and Mizraim had Caphtor. There's not a lot of people to search through biblically to figure out who we're talking about. And so we're going to jump into some exciting stuff. This is going to be the premise. I figured out this is going to be the premise of our next episode, because we got to keep continuing the beginning, and the beginning is right here. The tying into Egypt, and then that's going to tie into some other things like I've just been talking about, specifically Mr. Kothar Hasis. Like I was just showing you, Mr. Arthur Evans and such were telling us about how this is the divine craftsman. He's known in the Ugaritic Baal myth, and he has the same spelling as Caphtor, and he was also known as Kothar, was an Ugaritic god regarded as a divine artisan. He could variously play the roles of an architect, smith, musician, or magician. All right, there's some clues. Some scholars believe that this name represents two gods, Kothar and Hasis, combined into one. All right, he's well attested in ritual texts in a number of theophoric names, which is like a character or something to invoke a deity. He was believed to reside in Memphis and Caphtor. So there's another great tie-in is Ugarit, which is basically in the land of what should be Israel or Lebanon. They're part of the story, seeing what's happening. So Ugarit isn't in Egypt, but they came through Ugarit, Byblos first, before they got to this point. And they're saying this gentleman, this god of the arts and crafts, and specifically of the forge, Mr. Hephasteus Vulcan, resides in Memphis and Crete. And what a tie-in that is, which they say that might reflect the routes through which crafts and resources traveled in the late Bronze Age. He appears in various Ugaritic myths as well. In the Baal cycle, he uses his skills on behalf of other deities. In the beginning, El enlists his help with building a temple for Yam, and later he helps Baal in his conflict with the sea god, providing him with weapons with which he ultimately triumphs. All right. So the weather god subsequently asks him for help with preparing gifts for Atharat. And we're going to get into this specifically in our next episode, tying these two together in with our myth. But before I finish the episode, let's look at how they have purposely lied to us, either in ignorance or purposefully, as the sons of another god they proclaim, that, let me show you, pull this down, Ka-Ptah, which they tell us is the house of the Ka of Ptah. But as I was showing you, the spelling lines up for it to be the house of Caphtor. Now, it could have devolved into the house of the Ka of Ptah after he passed away. but it literally means the house of Kaphtor, house of the Ka. Take away the Ka is Kaphtor. Okay, and Ptah, like we said, heavily referenced in Memphis, Egypt, where his temple or mansion, it's the temple palace of Caphtor. And here I wanted to look into Egypt and see what that looked like. And it's a massive temple, and here is the Ptah of the Egyptians. Here he is right here in the blue hat. Okay, in a few other places, another blue hat, right? House of the Kaphtor, I believe that might have been after he passed, is when they try to form that into that. Saying that just again. But here's something crazy. The Temple of Ptah, which is the Temple of Caphtor, is a shrine located within the large precinct of Amun-Ra at Karnak in Luxor, Egypt. So who's one person who could be above Caphtor? That sounds like Ham of the sun god. So was Ham right off the boat, did he kind of mess up his whole lineage because he started worshiping the sun god, becoming known as Amun-Ra? And this is at Karnak in Luxor, Egypt. Okay, so we have Caphtor's temple residing within the precinct of Ham in Luxor, Egypt. Lies to the north. It lies to the north of the Amun temple, just within the boundary wall. Okay, so looking at that, that is a fantastic possibility and a probability as we look into it more. And we're going to dive into and spend our next episode looking at such. So wrapping this study up, I just want to hit on the fact that I'm not picking on Ham, that we will pick up this study into the sons of Japheth, that this is just the easiest place to pick up from it on. And that ultimately I hope you found a lot of information valuable in this study. I pray and hope that it leads you off into your own study, and that it empowers you in the way that it's empowered me to know that God is real, that He is with us, that He is an awesome story, if that we proclaim His name, if we push in, if we just have a relationship with us, He is more than happy and willing to give us everything that we ask for, knowledge that we seek. I remember sitting on a couch 8 years ago studying the Greek myths, Hades and Zeus and Poseidon, and trying to tie those in with the three sons of Noah, thinking that they tied in as a new Christian, and trying to figure out where these things came from. And it took me this long to come back around, and that's because of the goodness of God. And I know that information like this can change the hearts and minds of non-believers and Christians who are kind of slacking off, to be able to see and know that every piece of history has been moved by God, and that it's to our benefit. And so I just thank God for the study. I thank God for you watching. I hope and pray you have a great week, and that you come back and watch my next episode, which will be on putting the Baal cycles, and then also trying to tie in those Egyptian characters, but specifically Kothar the craftsman, and then in the Baal cycles, him coming and fighting. And then we'll go from there and see where God takes me, because God's just leading me on the way. And so if you'd like, please like, share, and subscribe. Tell your friends, make the study on your own. Share it with your friends on your own. I'm here to proclaim God's kingdom. Right? I'm here to gain a community of godly people, and learn as much from you as you from me. So please come back, please subscribe, and by the end of this week, I'm thinking Thursday or Friday, I should have the next episode set up with a little bit more graphics, hopefully a little bit more fun with this next episode. But knowledge is power. It's been fun for me. Hope it's been fun for you. God bless you. Love you. Peace.